Hello and welcome to The Game Changers, the podcast where you'll hear from extraordinary women in sport. I'm Sue Anstis, a founding trustee of the Women's Sport Trust charity and the founder of Fearless Women, a company with a powerful ambition to drive positive change for women's sport. Once again, this series of The Game Changers is supported by Barclays and will focus on fearless women in football. In each of the 8 episodes, I'll be talking to a trailblazing woman, reinforcing Barclays' huge commitment to the beautiful game. Last year, Barclays announced a groundbreaking commercial investment in women's sport in the UK. The Barclays FA WSL is now Europe's first fully professional women's football league, and their investment will also help to create the future growth of the league and its teams. Along with this fantastic support for women's professional sport, Barclays also invested in establishing the Girls Football School Partnerships, with the aim of ensuring that all girls in England have equal access to football in schools by 2024. My guest today fought very hard to be allowed to play football at school. Rose Reilly is an absolute legend of the game. Had Rose been born a boy, she'd undoubtedly be celebrated as a national hero, as one of Scotland's greatest ever footballers. As it is, her amazing career and her story went untold for decades by those who should have been celebrating her incredible sporting achievements. 8 league titles, World Player of the Year award, 4 Golden Boots, a professional career in France and Italy, and a World Cup medal. It's a fascinating story, and Rose is a delightful and entertaining guest on the podcast. It was only right to start by asking Rose when she'd first played football.
Since forever. Told by my mother I was 3 years of age and I wandered away from the family home, and she found me at the local football park, which was quite daunting for a 3-year-old because I couldn't visually see the football park. It was around a couple of corners, so she found me there. So there was obviously an attraction. There was no football getting played, I was just standing there. So that's a wee bit eerie, isn't it?
Just drawn to the ground.
Yeah, drawn to the ground. Then later on, when I was growing up, obviously, I was still just a wee bairn, as we say in Scotland, a wee kid. It was one of the Christmases when you write a letter to Santa Claus, what you would like, your toys. And of course, I said a football, and I got a doll, and I was absolutely devastated. And I went out and I swapped my doll for a football. Later on, I don't know, about 7-year-olds, 8-year-old, I just played with the boys. There was no female football in the days, absolutely none whatsoever. And I think my parents didn't know what to do with me because there were 8 of us, and I was the only one that wasn't kind of following the rule book. There was a boys' team, the Stuart boys' team, and the coach asked me if I would play with them. And I said, oh God, that'd be great. And he said, well, you need to go to the barbers and get a short back and sides, boys' haircut, and you'll need to change your name from Rose to Ross. I'll bring your football strip to the home because you can't come in the changing rooms. So I flew down to the barbers and said that I just told him the story. He said, does your mum know? I said, yeah, she'll be coming later with the money. She didn't know anything. So when I went back home, my mum nearly killed the barber and me with him. So now the wee boy Ross was born. So at one particular game, I had run riot and had scored 8 goals. And there was a Celtic scout there, and he was looking for, they were called S players in these days. It was just to sign on the young talent that's young boys in Scotland. So he asked the manager right away, he said, no, I want to sign the wee number 7. And the manager said, no, it's a wee girl. And he said, no, the one that scored all the goals. So he shouted me over to speak to the scout, and I was devastated because I thought if I was good enough, why couldn't I play for Celtic?
Absolutely.
So that was the story there.
And when did you go and watch your first match? Can you remember the first game you watched?
There was always football matches on at my local football ground, but of course it was just like amateur football.
Yeah.
But I'd be there in the freezing cold, just in absorbing it all. Then when I was about 12, 13 years of old, I had a great love for, I live in Stuart, and that's a small town outside Kilmarnock. So my local team's Kilmarnock, in the Premier Division. But I was in love with Celtic. As a good Catholic girl, I went to a Catholic school in Kilmarnock. So if you went to a Catholic school, there's a lot of religion, football-related stuff up here. So I was Celtic right away. And if you were a Protestant, it was Rangers kind of thing. I had chosen 3 teams as a kid. I chose Celtic, Real Madrid and AC Milan. So I was going for the top right away. I wasn't hanging about. I had a paper round to get some money. I decided I was going to Glasgow, about 20 miles from where I stay, to go and see Celtic. But I didn't tell anybody, because if I told anybody, I wouldn't have been allowed to go. There was a local bus that went to Glasgow. It took about 2 hours because it stopped in all the wee country villages. So I arrives up in Glasgow in the bus and gets off at the terminus. And I didn't know where I was going, but I could see all these men with Celtic scarves on. So I just followed them, and they thought I was a wee boy and asked for a lift over. You get a lift over nowadays over the turnstiles. Oh, of course, son, let's go. And they put me at the bottom of which was called the Jungle at Parkhead Celtics ground. So it was right near the pitch. I could actually nearly touch the footballers. And I thought I'd died and went to heaven when all the players came out, and it was amazing. But the atmosphere at Celtic Park, of course, they were good with us kids. Well, I thought I was a wee boy. But I always remember that they were just peeing everywhere. They weren't going to the toilet. I didn't even know if they were. There was no women there anyway. They didn't know, and they were just peeing everywhere. And the whiskey bottle was getting passed along from one side of the jungle to the other, as it's called. And I thought it was great because nobody was taking any more than they should. You know, they were all comrades kind of thing. So that was my first memory, the fantastic Celtic football team and the smell of whiskey and pee together, basically.
I love it. And I think you were about 9 years old when you made your debut for Stuart and Thistle Ladies. That was at 1965.
Yeah.
What did it feel like then playing with women for the first time, having played in a boys' team before?
There was a local women's team started up. I think it was a factory. There was about 35 factories in Stuart, and it was the wool factories that used to make the Stuart and bonnets and whatever, and all the tartan stuff. So the women decided to make a football team. It was for charity. I think they played at netball, and somebody said, let's have a football team. And the football team was started by Elsie Cook, my friend. Somebody said, there's women playing at football over at the park. So off I went, and I was 7-year-old. I said to the Elsie I said, excuse me, I better not speak Scottish, you don't know what I'm saying. Could I have a game, please? And she said, no, it's just women. We don't let boys play. I said, but I'm a girl. So I gender issues because I thought, right, I'm a wee girl, but I'm a boy for the boys team. I want to play with the women, but she said, no, I'm a wee boy. So I would have been anything in the days just for a game of football. So she said, anyway, you're too young, come back in 2 years. So I ticked it off in the calendar, and 2 years and 2 seconds later, I was back asking for a game. But this time, I think everybody knew me in Stuart, and I got my first game. So for the first time in my life, I could go in a dressing room to change with other females. But since I was only 9-year-old, and these were grown ladies, like they were 20, 30, 40, 50, they were ladies. So when we were stripping off, and I always remember they had on big white bras, Playtex bras. I always remember because you never seen your parents nowadays in a state of undress, but I remember my mum shouting me in their bedroom to help her with her bra one day. She couldn't get it on or off, whatever. And so it was these big white bras. So when I went in the dressing room and seen them in the state of undress, I thought they were all mummies because they all had white bras on. I mean, you're talking about a 9-year-old just getting...
I've seen some pictures of you with the team, and it is like there's always women, and then there's a little girl there at the front.
Yeah. So
fantastic.
that was my first memory of being in a dressing room, which has stuck with me.
Yeah, and you did a lot of athletics as well. You were a great athlete. So what was it that made you not follow that path?
So I did athletics, and I was in the pentathlon just because I was a kind of all-rounder. So the local athletics coach here, Kenny Phillips, his name is, he's still alive and he's 91 years of age. So I salute him and thank him. But he coached me, but we didn't have anything. We didn't have facilities with nothing. There was a sand pit to do the long jump. So anyway, we decided, I went for the Junior Scottish Championships up at Scotstoun, and I arrived in the scene and I didn't have anything. I just had like black training shoes. I didn't have a track, so I didn't have anything. And everybody that was there was kind of from posh schools, from the posh end of Glasgow and Edinburgh, private schools, track suits and whatever. So it was an all-day event, and they were going for lunch, and I didn't have money to get into the canteen or the restaurant for lunch. So they all went there, and me and my coach, Kenny Phillips, just sat under a tree with our sandwiches.
Aww.
But that wasn't a big deal for me. I didn't care. Who cares? Anyway, I won the event. Then I get shortlisted for the Commonwealth Games when I was 16. It was the first Commonwealth Games up in Edinburgh, I think. So I had to go up to St Andrews University for a week's training session with the Scottish team. So off I went again, and my mum bought me this wee tracksuit because I couldn't get up with nothing. And she bought me a pair of spikes that were about 3 sizes too big so I could grow into them. You know what it was like? So off I went. But when I arrived at St Andrews, these posh girls were all there again with their Adidas tracksuits, Nike tracksuits, whatever. I had nothing. I just had a plastic bag with my stuff in it. I was aware that they were all just staring at me and kind of judging me. I still had my boy's haircut and whatever. But I didn't care. Anyway, we started off. I always remember that the first session was 400 metres. And this girl came to me and she said, I came from the country. Sturton was just a wee village. And these were all Glaswegian, Edinburgh and whatever, private educated. She said to me, oh, the coach said you just go slow at the start for the 400 metre rows. Perhaps you didn't hear. So I said, oh, okay then. So I did, and they were away. But then I changed gear and I went flying by them all. They just kept staring at me. And then they asked me, we were doing the shot put, and she said, what weight is your putt at home that you do the shot put with? I said, I don't have one, I just have a rock. I just had a boulder. They must have wondered who the hell I was. But my rock must have been heavier than their putt because it just went flying. Anyway, at the end of the week, they all accepted me and whatever. But it was never an issue for me. I didn't care. I was in a mission. They could say what they want. If you've got a problem with me and it sticks to this day, it's not my problem. I don't have a problem with you. If you've got a problem with me, okay, deal with it because I don't have a problem with you. So at the end of the whole thing, Coach John Anderson said to me, right, Rose, you've been selected for the Commonwealth Games, but you have to give up football because you're having too much thigh muscle, football legs, let's say, which isn't good for athletics. And I said, okay, and I went home and my mum and dad were delighted because finally I'd got a career on the horizon, which was athletics, and I'd know there was nothing on the horizon for football. So I stopped playing football for the first time in my life for a week. Then at the end of the week, I made a decision. I was giving up athletics career where I had everything on the horizon for a football career where there was nothing. Mm. So once again, my mother they didn't know what to do with me, right? Complete desperation. In the meantime, I got expelled from the high school for playing football because I was just missing classes. I was just not turning up because if there was a football game going on anywhere, I was there. And of course, my parents didn't know because I had to go to a Catholic school in Kilmarnock. So they didn't know what I was up to. In those days, the physical education, there was one for the girls and one for the boys. When the boys' physical education PE teacher had seen what I was good at everything, he took me away from the girls and I was in with the boys. And he said, bring your sports bag every day, Rose. And when I chapped the window of whatever classroom you're in, I always remember it was wooden doors with a wee window, just come out. I'll speak with the teachers because you're actually not concentrating on your schoolwork anyway. So that was me. This was great. So that's what I did. But then other teachers rebelled and said, look, that's fine, what you're doing with Rose, but other pupils are rebelling. Why can she get doing what she wants, blah, blah, blah. So the headmaster, Mr. Matthews, I'll never forget it, he called my parents into the high school with me and I got expelled. It was strange because my parents didn't say anything and that was sad, you know. When I went to primary school, also in Kilmarnock, St Columba's Catholic school, there was 2 playgrounds, one for the boys and one for the girls. The girls weren't allowed in the boys' playground and vice versa, but there was a football game going on every lunchtime at the boys. So I went straight there. I get physically punished with it. You get the belt on your hands. The headmaster said, you're not allowed to get in there. So I went in every day and played my football and get punished every day. I didn't care. And one day I stared at him and he said, you're never going to learn. And I said, no, it's you that's not learning. I just want to play football.
I love that. Yeah. And obviously you went on to play and had amazing success in Scotland as a young woman. So various cups and trophies, but clearly that wasn't enough for you. So you wanted to become a professional footballer. So where did that take you?
Well, I wanted to become a professional footballer because that was my dream. And I was always convinced I was going to do it. It was in my head, and I was telling myself I was going to do this. When my dad would read his newspaper, I would sit on the floor and read the back pages, which was the football pages, and I would dream about Real Madrid and whatever. And then I thought, maybe they've got female teams. Maybe they've got women's professional teams. So I didn't know how to go about it. So I seen the name of Stan Shivers, who'd signed the article, and who worked for the national newspaper, the Daily Record in Glasgow. So off I went up there, and I went to the offices up in Glasgow, gigantic offices, and the secretary said, could I help you? I said, yes, I have to speak with Stan Shivers. And she said, have you got an appointment? I said, yes, which I hadn't. So she takes me to his office, and I walks in, and I actually couldn't see him for smoke, because in the days everybody smoked, right? And he was a sophisticated gentleman, and he was smoking a cigar, and he just looked up and he said, could I help you? I said, yes, my name's Rose Reilly, and I want to be a professional footballer.
How old were you then, Rose?
Maybe 16.
Wow.
So he just looked at me as if I was an alien or whatever. But then he said, I'll try and help you. So he got in touch with me to go back up to his office. He says, I found a semi-professional team in France, and it's called Stade de Reims. He said, is there nobody you can take with you? You're not going alone. I said, so I asked my best footballing friend at that time, Edna Nealis, the Scottish girl. She was a fantastic footballer. I think she was technically the best footballer Scotland ever has and ever will be. Sadly, Edna's not with us anymore. But anyway, she was my wee mate. Edna, do you want to turn professional? She says, aye, okay. So she was, I said, but it's in France. We need to go for a trial. She says, oh, we don't do trials. She was cocky. I wasn't like that. But anyway, they flew us. Well, I told my mum and dad, obviously. So that was it. So he flew us to the Daily Record with Stan Shivers. We flew to France.
Oh.
Gets to France. They had a trial game to see what we were like. And we ran riot, and we signed on at the interval at half-time. The president of the team. So we signed on, come back home to Glasgow, and of course told my parents I was going away.
So for this time, isn't it? How amazing of the Daily Record to fly you out there. What very progressive of them to do that for two young girls.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. And I can never thank Stan enough. I kick-started him to kick-start my career. Yeah, it was amazing. When we were leaving for France, I didn't have anything. I didn't have a suitcase or anything. But my dad had a kind of one of the kind of old-fashioned cardboard suitcases with wee clips on them. So we goes to Glasgow Airport to start our journey, or at least my journey, and the suitcase broke. So he got his belt off and his braces and wrapped it all up. So then we arrives in, it was Orly Airport at the time, with my Louis Vuitton luggage with everything falling out. So anyway, France was fine, but then scouts from AC Milan seen us playing and signed us. So 6 months down the line, off we goes to AC Milan. And when the plane landed in Linate Airport, right bang in the middle of Milan, there was no wee buses at the airport in the days. You just walked across the tarmac. And I had this feeling so that I'd arrived home. It was like a mother's embrace. I just felt at home in Italy. It was amazing. Of course, we were playing some of our games at the San Siro.
Wow.
After a wee while, Edna got homesick and went home. So I was staying in a hotel on my own. Hadn't a clue about the Italian language. None of my teammates spoke English. So at night I used to speak to myself in the mirror because somebody else was speaking back to me. Not in a sad way, it was just reality. Yeah. We didn't have a telephone at home. I had no communication with my mum and dad. They didn't even know I was in bloody Italy. I hadn't told them. So I went from France to Italy, and that was me.
Why do you think the Italians were so progressive in terms of their view of women's football? I imagine it was massively different to what was going on, clearly, in Scotland at the time.
Yeah. First of all, football, any kind of football for them is religion. They had embraced the women's sport in a professional way well before everybody's time, let's say. It was an Italian female federation, so they weren't part of the men's federation. So it was all big businessmen that had created this Serie A league. Hundreds of sponsors, television, you name it. We were on the front pages of La Gazzetta dello Sport. We were on Rai Television. We would go out with the AC Milan men's players at night. It was absolutely massive. So why they did it for the love of the game, first of all, and they must have seen something in the women's game.
They were making money, weren't they?
Yeah, obviously I was naive at the time. I didn't care if they were making money off me or whatever, because they obviously were, because I was in transfer fees that they were getting. But I didn't care. I just wanted to play the beautiful game. And for me, playing in Italy was immense.
But just think of all the people that say, "Oh, there's nothing. We don't want to watch women's football. There's no audience for it."
Yeah.
But clearly, in Italy, in the 70s and 80s, they proved absolutely drawing crowds and sponsors and broadcasts and everything.
Yeah, and eventually I'd won the Scudetto with AC Milan, and they couldn't keep me. They sold me on to Catania in Sicily, and there was 20,000 at the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And everywhere I went, I managed to win the Serie A. Then I won 2 golden boots. Then Scotland banned me for life for playing for the national team.
So how did that feel at the time?
I didn't care. I didn't care because, as I said before, so if you've got a problem with me, it's your problem. I ain't got a problem with you. Edna had come back home, and with my friend Elsie, they were challenging the SFA because women's football wasn't recognised.
Yeah.
Because the SFA, I think, were the last nation in Europe, at least, that acknowledged, accepted women's football, or let's say recognised it. So they were out marching with other girls, and they get banned from playing with the national team, I think. But in the days in Scotland, we were banned from playing in any football stadium. It was just local parks. We weren't allowed any referees. It was just some random guy. It was always a guy that turned up with a whistle. Everything was against the odds. And then I think Elsie wrote to me in Italy to say, by the way, you are banned from playing for Scotland. I says, I haven't done anything. I've just tried to better myself. Is that not a good thing? Anyway, I was banned. So I said, oh, well, that's it. I actually didn't have any feelings. I wasn't angry. I wasn't anything. I just didn't understand. So 5 years down the line, the Italian Federation asked if I would get citizenship outside and play for Italy, the national team. So I said yes, absolutely. It was an honour.
Absolutely.
Because there was about 40 foreigners playing there in Italy at the time, from everywhere, from Mexico, from Sweden, Switzerland, you name it, Brazil. And I was the only one that they asked to represent the Italian team.
Wow.
So obviously I agreed with it, and went on to win the World Cup with Italy. And I was proclaimed the women's best female football, I think 83, 84. And I thought, wow, that's great. That's coming from a wee Scottish lassie.
That's extraordinary.
Against the odds, because I nearly get burned at the stakes, get physically punished because I shouldn't play. So that was it.
And thinking back to that time, so obviously at that amazing World Cup, and you scored there as well. Do you feel that was a very pinnacle of your playing career, that World Cup?
Yeah, obviously, because doesn't get any better than that, right? But I always say it was a Scottish heart beating under an Italian jersey. After that, I remember I stayed in Venice for a week just to try and chill out after the highs of the World Cup, and I just was walking about smiling at every day, random strangers, because I was walking on a cloud. It was such an achievement, and I think it's an achievement for us women, you included, Sue, all us women, as British women that always get put down. I just put 2 fingers up to them.
Absolutely. You mentioned earlier in terms of that learning the language and the culture and everything. Do you feel that was very important to your happiness and success there?
Absolutely. I embraced it from day one. I remember seeing the newspaper, La Gazzetta dello Sport. It was a pink newspaper, a football newspaper, and it was a daily newspaper. And I thought, oh my God, I've never seen something like this before. So I bought it, but I couldn't bloody read it. So I bought a dictionary. And I learned 3 words a day because I was too thick for 4, because I wasn't academic. I just brushed that beside. And spoke to the locals. I had to walk from my hotel. I had to walk about a mile to the restaurant where I was eating in every day. So I was speaking with the locals. All the old ladies were sitting on their doorsteps, and they would make bread for me, and I'd sit beside them, and they would all be smoking like Galwazzies, the fags with the filter and whatever. Yeah. So I learned the language, and when I would go to the restaurant, I just ate what the Italians were eating. Yeah. Wow, that was it.
Yeah.
I was Italian.
It's so important though, isn't it? And actually I think we hear a lot of footballers that play overseas and, you know, want to remain exactly as they are. The fact that you embraced it so fully, and then you were loved by Italians because you had embraced their culture.
Yeah. I think that you obviously get accepted right away. If you respect the people wherever you're staying, they're going to respect you.
Yeah. And you were made captain. You were captain in a number of the teams you played for, but you didn't just play in Italy still, and the teams you played across in France as well?
Yeah, after that, when I was playing I was playing for Lecce, and the Stade de Reims president, Pierre, as you do, that was his name. He was editor of L'Equipe, the
massive sports paper. Yeah.
Aye. But anyway, so he got in touch with me and Lecce, and he said, "Would you play with us while you're still playing with Lecce? Because in Italy you played in the Saturday afternoon, and in the Sunday the French league played before the men's game, the females." And I said, well, okay. Aye, bring it on. So I used to play in the Saturday in the Serie A. Then in the Sunday morning, I got the plane wherever I was to Rome, and then from Rome to Orly. Played in the Sunday evening, stayed in Paris till Tuesday, flew back to Italy to train, and this went on for a year. And I won the leagues in 2 different nations.
Wow.
The same year, until I get banned from doing that because I don't know why.
That's extraordinary. And as captain, what do you think makes a good captain, as someone that has captained many teams?
What makes a good captain? I don't know what makes a good captain, because I didn't pick myself. Wherever I went, so I used to train twice a day. I would train on Mon. At first I trained Mon in the midday sun in Italy because it was so warm and I had to get used to it.
Yeah.
So I did that with all the teams I played anyway. Whenever the team, if they were training in the evening because of the heat, I would train in the afternoon, or vice versa. I always tried to better myself. Let's say I was married to the cause of football. That was my only focus. So everything I done was just thinking about the game and the Saturday and whatever. I guess that's why I was a good example. I don't know if I was the best example, because I actually didn't have a life outside football. That was me. That was me.
And you kept playing until you were 40. What did you miss when you gave up the game?
I decided I was going to give up the game when I was 39. I given myself a year in my head that once I turned 40, that was it, because football is an age thing. My teammates could have been my daughters, the referees could be my son. So I said, right, move on while you're still vertical, let's say. And carried off. So what was it like? So I had to kind of detox myself from my football career, but I'd already decided I was going to settle in Trani. That's where I had my flat and everything. And I'd opened up a sports shop. It was called Reilly Sport. Yeah. With a friend who was a local businessman. So that was my after career kind of thing. All my decisions and everything I've done in my life has always been on Mo, and I've never spoke to anybody. I get my inner strength from myself, and that's about it. So I make myself strong, and I decided it was another chapter of my life.
Did you consider coaching or managing or in football in that way?
No, because I don't think I'm good enough for that. I think a coach is like a teacher. They've got an ability. I don't. I feel as if I am football, but the SFA who banned me, they're not football. They're just faceless men in suits that decided to take football away, but they couldn't take football away because I'm still football. I still love the game. The only time I think I actually cried, not at the World Cup or anything, it's when Shelley Kerr took the Scottish women to the World Cup. That's when I cried. That's when I got emotional, because my girls were going to the World Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. It's wonderful.
So no, still got the great passion for the game, still in love with it. That kind of got away. That doesn't go away. And hats off to all the coaches and the female coaches. Really admire them.
And in 2001, you came back to Scotland when your mum was very ill, and you had a young baby with you as well, Valentina. Yeah. What did you miss most about Italy when you came back to the UK?
Everything. Oh. My life was in Italy. They asked me to go to a school to speak with the girls to see about promoting women's football once in Scotland. And I said, I don't think you could do what I did. I don't mean in the success. I said, everything's kind of panned its life out for me. because I had a late marriage. I met my husband, Norberto Peralta. He's from Buenos Aires. I met him in Italy when I was 43.
Oh, wow.
So we just clicked. We fell in love. And at the fantastic age of 45, I had my child, which, as usual, I didn't read the rule books. Maybe you shouldn't have a child at 45. And so you know what happens, being a professional athlete for all the years, I've hammered my body. My period was coming and going. So I thought I was in the menopause, but I wasn't. I was pregnant with my wee lassie.
Wow.
Anyway, I got married in Italy on my own, just me and him, as you do. I've always did everything on my own. Had my child there, and I called her Megan Valentina, because I was going to call her Valentina, her first name, because she was doing Valentine's Day, but she was a day late. But she prefers the name Valentina. She was about eight months old, and I got a phone call to say my mum had a severe stroke and she was dying. So I just got Valentina and a baby papoose and flew over to be by my mum's bedside. She said, "Don't leave me, Rose, I'm afraid." And I said, "I promise I wouldn't leave her." And I took Megan, Valentina out the baby papoose and lay her beside my mum. So she just kind of tried to cuddle her, but she couldn't. She was paralysed. And they gave my mum about a week to live. So I promised I wouldn't leave her. So I stayed with her every day and night with the baby, and she lasted 9 years. So 9 years later, I was still bloody here, because I don't give back on promises. No regrets. I could get Italy back. Can't get my mammy back.
And would you go back to live in Italy again if there was an opportunity?
Well, it's a financial thing, because I didn't make big money out of football. So once your child starts school, you just go with the flow. That's our education here. So Valentina's bilingual. I taught her Italian from day one. She's got the Italian culture. She's now 20. My mum died when Valentina was 9. She lasted the 9 years. My husband set up a business here, alternative therapy, because he's a cardiologist, a sports doctor. Right. But to work in a hospital here in Scotland, in Britain, if you're South American, you have to do 3 years uni. So we couldn't afford that because we were older. So I says, "Oh, bugger it, we'll just open up some." with no money. So we did everything. And he'd no English, but the human body's the same wherever you go.
It is mad when you think what you would have earned as the level that you were at as a footballer had you been a man. You seem very pragmatic about it all, but do you look back and think it's just so unfair of what might have been?
No. They'll never win what I've won. Never. That doesn't have a price, Sue.
Love it. I love it. So you're finally recognised in Scotland when you were inducted first into the Scottish Hall of Fame in 2007, and I believe you were piped into at the museum at Edinburgh Castle. So can you maybe describe what that felt like as you walked in then?
Right. When I come back home, right, to look after my mum, some of the newspapers, somebody must have said that I was kind of back in the scene, because I've never self-publicised myself. I don't like that. I was a footballer and that's it. So when I get piped in at Edinburgh, I don't know how to describe it. I couldn't walk. I couldn't talk. It was all just one big. Sorry.
Oh, bless you. Oh, I didn't mean to make you sad.
No, I'm not sad. It's just
joy.
Meant that I was back home.
Yeah, beautiful. And then I'm going to move on now to more, but then the Scottish FA inducted you into their Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And how did that feel, having been banned all those years ago?
Yeah. How did it feel? It felt, I was up amongst the greats like Kenny Dalglish, Dennis Law, all the fantastic Scottish players. So it felt that as I belonged with them.
Yeah,
I belonged with them. For what I'd achieved, I belonged with them. Didn't feel anything against anybody. I don't waste my energy in negativity. Absolutely not. Grateful, absolutely, for being the first woman inducted into the Hall of Fame. And it was just amazing to be beside all these great male Scottish players. And I thought this could open a door for Scottish women.
I was going to ask that. So do you feel that it was a very important moment? I mean, I guess not just for Scottish women in football, but for Scottish women.
Absolutely, because it's they're a wee bit more male chauvinist up here in Scotland than they are in England. Obviously, because I just look at results. I'm realistic about things. So that's about it. Everybody used to think the male chauvinists were in Italy, but they weren't. They were more in Scotland, let's say. I don't think a lot's changed, so I actually don't think it's changed much. We're talking about the legacy of the World Cup, the Scotland team. I think Shelley Kerr actually overachieved taking Scotland to the World Cup because we don't have the resources of other nations. And she did overachieve. So hats off to Shelley. We speak about the legacy of the World Cup. I'm speaking about Scotland, obviously. Yes. If we don't inject the money into it, there ain't going to be a legacy.
And does that frustrate you to see what's happening with the FA and the England, the Lionesses and the WSL?
Yeah. Yes, it should be a level playing ground. We can't compete with England if we don't have the resources. We're always talking about grassroots. I don't like the word grassroots because everything's all artificial. No, even the grass is artificial. There's no roots. So this was a fantastic moment. So the local sports centre, the new sports centre in Stuart, has been now named the Rose Reilly Sports Centre. The lovely Margot McQuaid for Purple Television did a documentary on me. They showed it in the primary schools, and there is now 48-year-old wee girls playing at football in Stuart at the sports centre. Now, for me, that's a legacy. That's a legacy. You have to start them young. You have to get it in the primary school. This is the future of Scottish football and British, I think, or women's, let's say. Get them young. Yeah. The younger, the better.
Absolutely. Also, massive congratulations to you. So in this year's New Year's Honours, you were awarded an MBE for your contribution to women's football. How special did that feel? How special did that feel at the time when you found that out?
Well, it was a Saturday morning and I was in Kilmarnock doing shopping on my own. And then when I come back, there was an envelope. My daughter was waiting at the door with my husband saying, "Oh, look, it was like from St James's Palace or something, the Queen, blah, blah, blah." So my hands started shaking to open it. No, they just wanted to see where it was. And I thought, well, there's two things. I'm either getting an honour or getting beheaded for all the stuff I've done.
My husband said, "You got his letter. It's either that or are we going to prison?" was his question.
Well, we're in prison just now because of the virus, same thing. When I opened the letter, and then I got this award. So my husband, he had a tear in his eye. I was actually shaking like a leaf, and I'm not an emotional person. I can't be to achieve everything I've done. You can't be emotional. You just go for the juggler kind of thing. So my daughter, she's a 20-year-old kind of grumpy teenager, said, she just said, "Oh, well." And then she looked at me, she said, "What's for the tea tonight?" So that's a kind of Scottish thing. She is half Italian, half Argentinian, half Irish, half everything. But it's that Scottish is don't get above yourself. Don't get big-headed. I was amazed. So I was really, really, really honoured because my career panned out in Italy. It wasn't in Scotland. And to be acknowledged in the honour list is, so I went straight up to the cemetery to tell my mum and dad.
Oh, beautiful, yeah.
When I get expelled from the school and my mum and dad were there with the headmaster, Mr. Matthews, it was a terrible moment because my parents weren't angry at me. It was more than that, so it was horrible, You'd be better being punished for than having silence, My mum was eventually in a nursing home in a wheelchair, paralysed, and there was a man beside her who called my name when I went to see my mum. He said, Rose Reilly, and I said, yes, and it was the headmaster that expelled me.
Oh, wow.
Sitting paralysed beside my mum, and he'd recognised me, and I went over to him and he said, "I followed all your career, Rose, and I've regretted expelling you, but it was out with my hands because all the teachers couldn't cope with you, so the decision was made for me." He said, "But it's the biggest regret of my life." So I gave him a cuddle. And we started kissing each other. And then he died about a month later. But that was a surreal moment because he was sitting beside my mum, the two of them paralysed, and this was me arriving in the scene again after being expelled, and him having these wonderful words for me.
I'm a bit of the belief of everything happens for a reason. I don't necessarily believe in fate, but I think it pushes you in a direction. So actually, had you not been expelled from school, you may not have taken the course that you did to travel and to, you might have ended up in university, or you might not have gone to Italy.
No, I don't think so. It's like my mum and my dad, obviously my parents. What did they want from a good Catholic daughter? Like 100 kids, procreate. But instead of that, I gave them 100 goals. So that's equivalent,
Absolutely.
Right, there's no ifs there, so there's no ifs. Nah, I was going to play football.
Excellent. And I'm assuming you haven't collected your MBE yet because of all that's happened?
No. I got a phone call, actually. It was a phone call from St James's Palace 2 days ago. So I was to collect it in Holyrood Palace in Edinburgh on the 30th of June. So it's obviously been postponed because of the virus. And I was already getting a dress made, a tartan dress, because I'm Scottish.
Lovely.
And I'm going as Braveheart right there. Come on, let's go. So it's postponed, and the guy was very apologetic. I said, don't be. I said, well, it'll be a bigger party because it'll be a double party. It'll be everything. We'll celebrate. So I don't know where it'll be now and when it'll be, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I've got it. And anyway, I want it from the Queen. I just go for the best. I'm going for the highest one.
Come down to Windsor. Tell them you want to come down to Windsor for it. That's where she makes their awards.
Right.
Fantastic. And just finally in closing, you're clearly such an inspiration for anybody that's got a dream to achieve something. So what advice would you give to young women and young men now who are kind of starting out on their sporting careers at the moment?
Just do it. I got an honorary degree from Glasgow University not long ago. So it was all the intellectuals that were speaking before me. And then it was my turn. I says, oh my God. So I just said to the pupils that were there, I just says to them, right, that's the boring stuff. Bye now. Here I'm coming on. I said, in life, if you want to do something, just do it. Don't listen to anybody. Don't listen to your parents. Don't listen to the police. Don't listen to your tutors. Because if you want to do something, it's your life. You know what I mean? Where parents always want us to be brain surgeons or whatever, or lawyers. If you want to be a cleaner, you can be the best cleaner. Who the hell cares? It's your life. You come into this life alone and you go out alone. So in between, do what you want.
I absolutely love talking to Rose and look forward to meeting her in person in the future to find out more about her incredible career. Another big thank you to Barclays for their support of the Game Changers, which enables us to share the stories of these amazing women with audiences all over the world. And thanks also to Sam Walker from What Goes On Media, who's a very talented executive producer for the Game Changers podcasts. If you'd like to find out more about all my guests from this and previous series, there are more details on our website, fearlesswomen.co.uk. Thanks for all your lovely comments on social media. It's fantastic to hear people are enjoying the podcast. If you could take a moment to leave a review or a rating, that would be brilliant. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. You can also find us on social media at Sue Anstis or at The Game Changers. Next week, I have the absolute privilege of talking to Dr. Rimla Akhtar, MBE, former chair of the Muslim Women's Sports Foundation and the first Muslim woman to be on the FA Council. She's also a passionate champion for equality and diversity in sport.
We need to stop making excuses. This is about everyone working together. We need to create an environment where the diversity is celebrated and difference is celebrated.
The Game Changers. Fearless Women in Sport.